Tape Deck Media.
Step right up. Listen to the Awful Service Podcast. It's future radio on your computer phone. You've heard of Hannah and Barbera, Laurel and Hardy, Sears and Roebuck, now Doyle and Cocazello. Are you a bean counter at your boring job? Listen to the Awful Service Podcast. We've got segments, we've got guests, we've got Karens.
The Awful Service Podcast, available where all podcasts are streamed. Brought to you by Tape Deck Media.
Riddle me this, riddle me that. We got the riddles that'll make you chat. Oh yeah, baseline stuff been through this tight. Get your funk on, we're rocking tonight. One more time.
Good morning, Riddle Maniacs. Welcome back to Riddle Me This. As always, I am your faithful host, Jelly Rolls Stunt Double, Taylor Ruddle. Hope you're having a wonderful Thursday and you've got some exciting plans for the weekend. I myself am going to be watching a professional wrestling show this Saturday, Unified Pro Wrestling. If you're in Christchurch and you like a bit of the old wrestling, I highly recommend you get along. So in today's episode, I have got a guest that I was actually meeting for the first time live on the pod, and that guest is Dan Boerman. Dan is a stand-up comedian from Wellington, New Zealand, who recently completed a very, very successful run at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 2024. I forget who contacted who first. I think I might have messaged Dan asking if he had any thoughts on doing a podcast, sharing some tips about it. But then I also later saw that he was offering to run a workshop, kind of doing the same thing. So it might have been an example of parallel thinking there. But yeah, Dan and I had been aware of each other for a while, so it was cool for us to meet for the first time, and he turned out to be a very nice guy. So let's just get straight into it. Riddle Maniacs, please welcome to the show, Dan Boerman. Hello, Dan. Welcome to the podcast.
Yo, how you doing, man? Happy Monday. How's things going?
Yeah, not too bad for me. How about yourself? How long have you been back in New Zealand?
1 week and 1 day. They reckon It's like an hour. What is it? A day for every hour time zone that you change. So it's like what is it? Yeah, 14 time zones, 14 days, they reckon, or 12. I don't know, bro. I'm fine though. It's been a week and I'm chill.
Is that to recover from the jet lag, they reckon?
No, from the Fringe.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, they reckon for every show that you did, it takes a day to recover. So I did 40 spots over there, so I'm not going to be feeling okay till late October. Jet lag and that. Jet lag's sweet though. It was like a week yesterday, and I'm feeling all good, man.
Wonderful. So yeah, you will have heard this in the intro to the listener, but we are talking about the Edinburgh Fringe today, and you had the great idea of wanting to spread some of your wisdom and give people the chance to stand on the shoulders of giants. So I thought that was a fantastic idea, and here we are on the podcast. So the first thing I thought, let's get a little bit of context of you. So you've been doing stand-up for 3 years, I think was what your bio said?
Yeah, dude, I found an email to the Wellington Raw Quest today from 12 years ago. So I went to do a spot in 2012, but I did my first spot 3 years ago. So there was 9 years of me chickening out.
Wow.
But officially 3 years.
What was the, do you know why you sort of decided not to go for that initial spot? Was it just like stage fright and everything?
Dude, I think it was stage fright, but also looking back, it wasn't just that I didn't have 6 minutes. I actually didn't have any jokes. Like I didn't even have like a joke. Like I didn't even have one joke. There weren't any. Bro, so I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't. And yeah, stage fright and all the rest.
Oh, brilliant. And then what was the thing that pushed you to finally sort of like get back on the wagon and give it a go?
So there were like 3 or 4 times throughout, like, because that was when I was 18, I'm 30 now. Every couple of years I'd have like this aha moment. So in 2012, I was like, yep, I'm going to do it. This is me. I'm going to be a comedian. And then in 2017, I had that same moment. I was on a flight over to the UK with my ex-partner, and there was this doco on the plane called Dying Laughing. And it was like interviews, black and white, candid shots, like, I don't know if you've seen Dying Laughing or Dying of Laughter. It's called one of the two. I feel like
I did a long time ago, yeah.
Yeah, dude, same, right? And on the flight over, I was like, yep, this is me, going to be a comedian. But every time I was like, I'm going to be a comedian, I wouldn't then go and write jokes. I'd just be like, and now, like it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so this time around, I was like, cool, this time when I have the idea that I'm going to be a comedian, I'll write some jokes and do a gig. So yeah, I don't know what changed. It was like, I think like getting older partially as well, right? And just being like, fuck, I need to like get onto this.
I think as well as it's a bit like, they say weird to compare comedy to Alcoholics Anonymous, but they say you kind of just have to be ready to make the decision on your own. I feel like you just have that feeling that it's just time.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, eh? And it is like, I've never heard that comparison before. But yeah, it's kind of like, it's like when you get in therapy, it has to,
yes, therapy, that would have been,
but it has to come from within.
Yes, exactly. So I think stand-up can be a little bit like that. You just know when it's time. And 100%. So what other context? Are you like working a side job or anything like that to pay for the comedy hustle, or is this what you do full time?
Nah, so I don't do this full time. I've got a job during the day. I've worked many random jobs in my life. I am a barber by trade. That's been what I've done for many, many years.
Very cool.
And it's a fun thing to still be able to know how to do. It's kind of like a more functional juggling, I suppose. It's just like you just know how to do it. I run a tea store in town. That's why I'm drinking the Sencha right now. I've done retail, done just lots of random stuff, bro. Yeah.
Piecemeal. Oh, very good. So then let's get into some of your preparation for Edinburgh. This was your first year heading over to do the Fringe this year?
Yeah, that's correct. First time doing any festival, first time doing any shows outside of New Zealand. I mean, I did a spot for Joe Damon's show in Brisbane back in March, but I'd never done anything overseas. So first festival, first Edinburgh.
Very cool. And so in terms of practical steps, the two things I've heard are the hardest about getting into the Edinburgh, getting a venue and getting accommodation. So how did you manage to sort those two out? Because you mentioned in the post that it was all done without PR, without an agent. So you were kind of doing this all on your own?
Yeah, 100%, man. And I didn't even I know for the big names and stuff, I imagine I went into it real blind, right? I thought your Jimmy Carrs and your Bill Burrs, they'll have a team working with them. I didn't realize that most people in Edinburgh did have a team, or they did at the very least have a crew of mates helping them. Mm-hmm. I, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not I'm one of maybe a couple Kiwis who just kind of went over and just kind of YOLO'd it, most people had, I'm not saying most people had help because everyone was running circles around me for hard work and talent, but people had a crew, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of the way that I managed the venue, I reached out, it was January this year, I got my little wall planner up and I was sweet, had all the dates for the deadlines for Edinburgh. I manifested it real hard. I mean, I'd show you my wallpaper on my phone, but I'm using my phone for this call. But I had this thing in my head. I was I had this when I'd gone to Edinburgh last year in February, I'd taken this real nice photo of this old building down the street that I'd always walk past for the few days that I stayed there. And I made that my wallpaper on January 1st. And I was this is my fucking just went real woo and real dream board about it.
Yeah.
I was this is going to be me. So what I ended up doing is I applied for, there was PBH, Free Fringe, there's Laughing Horse, I think Just the Tonic. So there's a lot of fringes within the Fringe that are kind of free where you give them money and they'll suss you a venue and a time slot, etc. if you're successful.
Cool.
So I applied for many of those. So it's you imagine at the New Zealand Fringe, I could go and find a bar and I could go and do the marketing and everything else, or I could give you X amount of money and there's Taylor's Free Fringe Festival, and for a fee you'll be hey bro, I've got Fringe bar and I've got these time slots. So that's how they kind of run. And I didn't get into any of them. There's just so much demand for everyone trying to get in everywhere, and even me making a plan in January, people by January this year, people already had their agents and their PR and stuff in touch with the papers for interviews and reviews, and I thought I was ahead of the game, but I was relatively speaking behind it. So I ended up getting very lucky because Sally O'Sullivan is part of the crew at the Scottish Comedy Festival, and the Scottish Comedy Festival is not dissimilar to that kind of framework where they've got a couple of venues and they have slots and they can help kind of facilitate kind of getting you into the Fringe. So they had the Waverley Bar and they had the Beehive Inn. I think it was downstairs, upstairs at the Beehive and the Waverley. And he hooked me up with what was originally a 11:30 at night slot. And I was sweet, I'll take any slot. And then one came up at 10:15. So shout out Sally O'Sullivan. He's the bro. he helped me do that. And like, if it wasn't for him in the Scottish Comedy Fest, like I probably wouldn't have been able to get over to Fringe, or I would have had like a 2 p.m. slot in some like real dusty venue in the middle of nowhere.
Hey Ramblers, I'm going to be recording my second ever full-length comedy special, Taylor Ruddle, Panic at the Buffet, on the 26th of October. It's a Saturday from 8:30, and I would absolutely love it if you could be there. In Panic at the Buffet, I explore 5 different experiences from my life where I started overthinking, panicked, and then did something that I regretted at the time, but make for entertaining stories in hindsight. Some of the experiences in question include buying clothes as a plus-size man, trying to spell my name over the phone, a little white lie to a cashier that got out of hand, trying not to frighten women on the street at nighttime, and of course, the buffet. It all culminates at the end when I have the chance to step up and be a hero, having finally got a handle on my awkwardness. Or have I? Come along and find out what happened. The reviewer Bad Apple described this show as a fantastic investigation into the effects of anti-intellectualism in New Zealand, of self-realization, and the true dangers of small-town Foursquare check-ins. I was nominated for the Best Comic at the 2023 Nelson Fringe Festival, and I won the New Zealand Comedy Guild Breakout Comedian of the South Island 2023. So it's gonna be a really funny show. There's some early bird tickets available for $15, but general admission is $20. You can get those from littleandromeda.co.nz. This one is going to be my last full-hour show for a couple of years, as I want to spend the time following this building up the podcast and other kind of online content. So if you've been meaning to come out and see me at a comedy show, you just haven't got around to it yet, this is pretty much your last chance to see me doing an hour for a couple of years. So I highly recommend you come out and have a giggle with me. Ticketing link is also in the show notes. Thank you, and back to the show. Have you seen Baby Reindeer?
No, okay, so I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it, and it's like, you know, it kind of feels far-fetched, and then you do a month there and you're like, oh yeah, this checks out. This is a thing. This is like, you know, Baby Reindeer didn't have to be about that guy. You could fucking follow around any performer at the Fringe for a month and you'd probably have a similar doco.
Yeah, I just remember he had a real dusty pub at about, I think he had like a 1 o'clock slot or something. And I remember the scene they flicked off, there was the football was on TV and they flicked it off and all these guys are, oh, fucking Edinburgh Festival. And they're all like putting their pints down and getting up and walking away. And just, it's great.
It's funny you mentioned that because there was like a lot of like kind of, not hate from the locals, but there were locals who were a bit over it. Like I'm from Martinborough in the Wairarapa, and I should clarify, pre-gentrification Martinborough, working class. And every year when the Martinborough Fair, or like Toast Martinborough is a good example, Toast Martinborough would come to town. Me and the whānau would just go out to the beach for the weekend. Like we would leave town and just go out to the coast to just kind of get away from it. And everyone's like, oh my God, Martinborough. And we're like, fuck off. And I imagine that I was the equivalent over in Edinburgh where I'm like, holding up traffic, taking photos of castles and shit.
But that's the thing. I think it must be a bizarre experience to not be into the arts and be living there, because for a whole month, your whole life is just dominated by this festival.
100%. But I just think everyone's into, well, yeah, dude, everyone's into the arts in some capacity. Like those people who turn their nose up, like they'll have a Spotify account, you know, they'll be consuming something in some form. So it's like, just, you know, what's a few extra bloody theatre kids in your city for a month?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. Okay, so is there anything else you wanted to add about venue, or like any advice for people for venue or accommodation? I guess, how did you find your accommodation?
So the accommodation, there's a few ways to go about it. What I've heard is successful is people all going in on a flat. So I know that can be a good way to do it. And then the added benefit of that, well, there's 2 ways to do it. You can get all your buddies together. You can find a flat and you can spend however much money for 8 of you to live in a flat. That's a good way to do it because, dude, like bunk beds, like 300-400 Kiwi a night for some bunks in a hostel with 8 people. Like it's extortionate. So you could go down the road of getting somewhere with all your buddies and staying in a flat. The benefit of that is you're properly immersing yourself. You're living and breathing it because you come home and that's all you're talking about and all you're doing. I mean, put it this way, right? From a legal perspective, the UK is a bit funny about subleasing, and I'm not going to break laws. Okay, I'm not a law breaker. but there's other ways to do it. So, if you had a friend over there who, had a spare room or something, that's one way to go about it. But I know people did student accommodation and bits and pieces. But if you were going to get a 1-bedroom apartment and rent it for yourself for the month, you can be prepared to pay $10,000 New Zealand for that.
Yeah.
It's bananas. So what I would recommend is like, if you've got a friend over there, you got some Kiwi mates who are over there, they've got a couch for you for the month, or you do a fortnight with them and a fortnight with some other people. Could be a way to do it strategically. Yeah. You try your luck on the apps, maybe go on like Hinge and couch surf that way, like who knows. But no, for myself, I think like if you're looking at a successful Fringe run, you could probably argue, marketing the show, writing the show is of equal importance to being strategic about your accommodation. Like if people are thinking of doing Fringe 2025 and it's September now, like in the next few weeks, get your accommodation lined up, chat to your mates over there, find a couch, try your luck with getting a flat for a bunch of people, but genuinely just lock that in now and then make sure that you stay on real sweet terms with those friends, because a lot can change in 10 months.
Yeah.
You want to be greasing up hard. You want to be liking all their photos on Insta, clap, react in the stories, because they're going to save you $10,000 down the line.
That's a big one I've heard. I think when I did the Dunedin Fringe, the only reason I didn't lose money is because a friend of mine allowed me to bring a little fold-away mattress and sleep on his floor for a couple of days. So, yeah,
Doesn't it, like, say a lot about the state of the arts, where it's like, take a step back and think about that sentence. I didn't lose money as a performer because I was allowed to sleep on the ground. Like, that's a fucking crazy sentence. You know what I mean? But that's genuinely, like, you get to sleep on your mate's floor, so you break even. It says a lot about, I won't go on too hard, but you know what I'm putting down, right? I went home with some money because I slept on like a squab on the ground.
Yeah, that could be a whole nother podcast, to be honest.
100%.
Let's move on to your next point. So the one you'd posted a few in the Wellington group. The first one here, it says how you marketed your show without PR or an agent. So what was your kind of strategy there? Did you, I think I read some of your posts about it, that you seem to be sort of changing it on the daily, and you were sort of adapting things as you went. What was your kind of, did you have an overall strategy when you went in, or did you sort of figure it out?
Strategically speaking, look, man, like everyone's out there flyering, right? There's hundreds of flyers, there's thousands of flyers. I was the only one with a knife. Pretty quickly, people come to your show, lead by intimidation. Nah, look, what I did, so I'll talk you through the marketing, right? The thing is as well, when I told people in Scotland that, like half of them believed me as well. Like any Glaswegian you chat to, they're like, yeah, fair play. Like, it's good to see us. Like,
you got to do what you got to do.
So New Zealand Fringe, Comedy Fest, historically I've been like, if I double down real hard and just post it everywhere and just go ham, I can fill some seats, comp some friends, tell your mates, get them along, get some paid bumps and seats, etc. Over in Edinburgh, my thinking was, there's so many people, there's so much to compete with. I'm not even going to put up an Insta ad because it's going to get lost in the noise of thousands and thousands of people doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So I just thought, this one's genuinely down to the grace of the comedy gods, what happens here. And then after a day or two there, I was picking up flyers from everyone. I was walking around, I was chatting to people, I was going to some other shows. And I kind of twigged after a day or two, I was like, fuck, I actually might be able to steer the outcome of what happens with my show. And the thing that I realized I'd be able to do was interpret what all the marketing was, see the flyers. I mean, I had a stack of 50 of them for reference where I was staying. And I'm like, there's so much noise with a lot of flyers, like with respect, people putting so much fucking information on what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right. Like, we've got 7-second attention spans because we all go on social media. We're all like ADHD now from the apps. We don't have a lot of time to figure out, do I want to give this person money or not? So I was like, well, what I'll do is I'll get my flyers, I'll get my posters, and I'll just strip it right back from what I was doing, which was still pretty straightforward, like an image of my face and the name of the show and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what do people want to know? If they spend £5, that's a good thing to do with the £5. If they go there, they will laugh. I'm from New Zealand. they will have a good time. Because those are surely the qualifiers for a show. Like, you're going to have a good time. The £5 you have in your wallet should be spent here. And he's from New Zealand, and there's some funny comedians from New Zealand. So I just changed my poster after the first day, reprinted a few hundred of them. Dan Boerman is from New Zealand. He is funny. You will laugh. And I just stuck those absolutely everywhere. Like, I've gone pretty hard historically in New Zealand with postering and flyering, and kind of towed the line a little bit on what's maybe like acceptable. Like, dude, I had A3 stickers. Some guy would walk past, I'd fucking like slap one on his guide dog. Like, there was just every rubbish bin, every lamppost, just put them everywhere. So what ended up happening, because I know fuck all about marketing, but I'm trying to suss it out. Like, is that thing they talk about where like people won't come to your show if they get a flyer, but when they see the flyer and they're like, oh, I've seen that on the lamppost and seen it here and seen it here, then they kind of trust it and all the rest. So anytime I'd slap a poster up in town, I'd always put two of them together. And I don't know psychologically if that means fuck all, but if you've got like a big thing of all these posters of everyone's shows, I'm like, well, if we're pattern seeking mammals and there's like 3 Dans, your brain goes, oh, look, that one kind of like repeats, and you maybe pay a bit more attention to it. I don't know.
Very interesting.
And I also just think it's funny to walk past seeing 3 Dans. But the way that I did that was just refine the marketing on the posters and what it said, strip it right back to be like, you will have a good time, you will laugh. And dude, it just, they popped, they stood out, because everyone's posters, everyone's collateral had, look at me using the word collateral like I know what it means. Everyone's stuff had a lot of words, and my stuff had less words, and I think that helped. I had people come to the show who worked in marketing who are like, hey, we don't know if you're funny, we don't know who you are, but we just really like the marketing, and we wanted to come up. And that was cool to hear, man.
A friend of mine, well, sort of friend, he's a bigger name comic. He's called Darren Walsh. He does mostly puns and one-liners. This year, his from what I could tell, his poster was like done up to look like it was drawn in like a Sharpie kind of pen, and it was a white piece of paper that just said, do you like puns, with a question mark and a circle. And then, dude,
I saw that in Edinburgh.
Yeah. So it didn't even say who he was. It just said where it was and what the time was. And then I think it might have had a logo or something on it. And he does these other ones, because we were talking before about how you're quite onto it with your social media clips. He's got a series about doing puns in the street. And so he would just stand next to that poster and do puns in the street to people there. Yeah, it was genius, because it stood out. It was like heaps of information, colorful, just white, colorful, and it really stood out from the rest. And then what was wild is he would be recording these puns on the street things, and he'd be handing the flyers out to people, but he'd be like, oh, the shows are all sold out, so you can have it if you want, but I don't really need to. So yeah, he just destroyed with the marketing, and same principle as what you did, strip it back.
I think what's good about a couple thoughts there. The first one is like, I saw those posters, and I saw so many posters everywhere. And of all the marketing I saw, there were 2 that stood out. There was one flyer I got where the writing on the front was printed in like gold. So it was real shiny, and it was only a shiny flyer. And I was like, that's fucking cool. It's like a Pokemon card. So there was that one, whatever that was. And there was his. And I saw those posters. I was about to mention it to you if you didn't bring it up, because I was like, they stood out. And it was so like, it's like what a lot of beer companies do now, and like drinks and stuff. They're like Garage Project with their beer. It's just a white can that says, because there's so much noise when you're looking at all of that, it's kind of like it pops. So that's super cool. But I like your point about the, he's handing out flyers. He's like, oh, well, it's sold out, but have one anyway. What I did is a little bit naughty, but I wanted to see how it went. The first show sold out, and that was when I realized, like, oh shit, if I hustle hard, I can maybe do the same for the other shows. I'd get flyers working with the cash in the bucket from the night before, and I'd say to them, like, I'd be tracking on my phone, we've got 10 tickets left, we've got 5, we've got none left. When it sold out, I'd double down, and I'd be like, look, go out flyer, and let's not be misleading and tell people there's seats when there's not, but it's like, keep creating hype. These nights that are selling out, they're the ones I want to fly hard. The FOMO and all the rest from what I was doing. I mean, there were some Saturdays where I'd have 60 people in, and there were like 10, 15 people on the stairs who were like, oh man, and they would like come to the venue, grabbed a beer, and they missed out. And it's like, shit, if I'm creating a kind of buzz where people are missing out on the shows,
leave them wanting
one
more.
of 2 things is going to happen. I'm going to alienate them. They're going to be shitty and never come to the venue again. or they're going to tell their mates, at brunch tomorrow, it's like, fuck, I wanted to see the show, but I couldn't make it, because like I haven't seen the comedian you're referencing, but I'm already thinking he's incredible because his shows are selling out and I couldn't get a ticket, right?
That's it, man. There's this old trick that I learned. Well, it's not a trick that I learned necessarily to use on something else, but I'm quite a big professional wrestling fan. And so back in the day, what they would do is when they were traveling around, like say you were based in the UK and then you did a show in Germany, you would buy like as many postcards as you could from Germany and you'd take them back to wherever you're from. And then you do the same thing when you went to Puerto Rico and then America. And so you just have all these postcards. And what they would do is they would send them to the big wrestling companies and it would simply just say, hi, the wrestler's name, just thinking about you while I was not just thinking about you. That sounds weird, but they'd say, consider me for bookings. I'm going to be available from whatever it was. And the logic being that the company would see like, wow, one from Germany, one from Mexico, one from America. Like this guy must be really busy. He's getting lots of work in different parts of the world. So they would create the illusion of being in demand. And so, I mean, it's all perception, isn't it?
It's like that meme I saw ages ago where it's like you get some boots and leave them outside your house, but you put them like 2 meters apart so everybody thinks you're enormous.
Yeah.
Someone like a giant lives here.
Yeah. I always thought it would be funny to just hang like, a boxing bag in your house or just things that make you seem tough so that people would think twice before, trying to break in or start some stuff. So I think it's there's something to be said for like the idea of value. People say, what is something worth? And it's like, well, what is somebody willing to pay? That's the value, right?
Oh, dude, people laundering money through $50 million paintings is testament to the idea that the value is placed exactly like you say and what people think it's worth, right? And that is a lot of it, because realistically, like 3 years in, I'm going to be one of the least funny people at the Fringe, right? Like just based on the merit of my writing and my gear and my routine alone, like relatively speaking, I'm not going to sell a lot of tickets, but what I can do in the interim until I get good is, slap 100 posters everywhere and try and hustle. And because that was the thing for me, was getting the bums on seats, right? Doing 21 shows, getting that accumulative stage time was important. Yeah. But having as many people to test it on as possible, right, was key for me.
Did you find yourself hitting a wall at all as to sort of being a little bit sick of the show?
I had Mondays off, right? So I did 21 shows. If I hadn't had those Monday breaks at the recommendation of Sally for my first Fringe run, I can imagine that would have happened. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't do any bookings. I wouldn't do any spots on Mondays. Mm-hmm. I can imagine that I may have. I do remember towards the end of the show, the last couple of shows, I'd do my routine and people would laugh and I'd almost kind of get the ick and I'd be like, what the fuck are you laughing at that? Like, I'd be like, what? I'd do a bit. I'd want them to laugh and they'd laugh and I'd be like, ugh. Like, because I had said it so many times, it almost kind of lost a lot of color in my mind. I was like, what did something like fall down behind me as my fucking flying done? Why are you laughing?
Yeah, for me, I found that I did a run of about 20 shows with Chaos a year or so ago. And for me, it was about show 13. I remember going into some bits and being like, oh, this bit again. And so I was like, okay, that's when you need to start adjusting and you change the order of your stuff and you just do things to keep it fresh for yourself. So, but it sounds like Mondays off was a good strategy for you.
Did you find when you did that run with Chaos, were there ever times in your show, because this is what I found in Edinburgh, where I'd like do a joke and, obviously some jokes, there's pacing required where you're spending a couple seconds in silence waiting for the next tag. Mm-hmm. And those little silent moments, they're almost kind of like meditative. You're almost like sat there, you're waiting for the laughter and you're just kind of, you're almost just taking like a little bit of a breather mentally because you've done the bit so many times. You've been up there, you're going over and over it again. You're stood up there in the silence, pre-laughter, and you're just kind of like, this is nice. Oh, look at that. They've got antlers on the wall here,
So I have a theory. I don't remember if that happened a lot in the Chaos tour, but that was because we were in a lot of new spaces and it was all sort of changing and stuff. But I have this theory that like when you start off doing stand-up, you need 100% of your brain power just to remember your bits. And then the more you do it and the more proficient you get and the more comfortable you get on stage, the less of your brain power is required to just keep everything moving. And then you get to a point where you're so familiar with your routines and you're so comfortable on stage that like you say, in between. It's like your brain is just free to, and that's when you'll notice, like you say, you'll notice the antlers on the walls. And every now and then I've begun to get things where I can be mid performing one piece and actually thinking about what's to come next. And I feel like maybe that's the next stage of the monkey brain is.
That's so good, man. It's like comedy's like driving. If you've done it for a couple of years, right, you can just do it drunk.
Yeah, yeah, it's exactly like that.
Yeah. No, but it is, right? It's that like autopilot thing.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, definitely. I definitely am familiar. And you said you're about 3 years in, so that feels about right. And I can imagine you're probably only going to get more alert and stuff as to what's happening the more you do it. So I think so, yeah.
Fringe was the first time in 3 years that I've done spots without notes. So I'd always have a couple of lines on my hand for reference, just a couple of here's what's next, or a little notepad behind a book or something.
Yeah, totally.
And there were a couple, what's that?
I just said, yeah, totally.
Yeah, dude, it was the first time that I'd done like the full hour. Well, for being honest, like 50 minutes without notes for reference. And sometimes you'd miss a gag or you'd reorder stuff, but it was,
it happens. Yeah.
Pretty confronting.
Yeah. So the next one you've got written down here is the benefits of Edinburgh and the opportunities. Well, that's kind of what we're talking about now, is you obviously get a lot of stage time at Edinburgh. Did you notice any opportunities pop up? Like, I guess, good networking. There's all sorts of industry bars and everything like that. Did you?
Yeah. So like, I didn't go as hard in the paint as I could have. And I sell myself the idea that I was trying to be sustainable about it. In reality, I could have worked a lot harder. Because like I wasn't spending time in bars like I should have been afterwards every night. Like I was out and I was bumping into people, but it would happen at random times, like during a gig when the headliner was on, before I had to exit flyer. I ran up the road with cash from the night before to grab myself a baguette from Pret, and I bumped into Eddie Izzard. I was like, oh, holy shit, it's Eddie Izzard. And said hi for like 4 seconds to keep it real cool. In terms of networking, in terms of opportunity, all of that, like I did the maths, and if I did my hour at night, and let's say I did one spot a day, because some days it'd be 4, some days it'd be just my show. So let's just say an hour plus a 10-minute spot. The stage time that I got in 3 or 4 weeks at Edinburgh, it has taken me 18 to 24 months to get in New Zealand. And here I'll do a couple shows a week, 100 plus a year. That's kind of the KPI. But over there, the elapsed accumulative stage time, fuck. And like, I'd never done a festival before, so that's probably not new information to people. But yeah, dude, like the opportunity for me was to do that much material in front of that many people. I was on some lineup shows and bits and pieces and met some cool people who I admire, like Kiwi comics who I love. I think I like the idea as well that being over there, like, realistically 3 years in, no one's going to be like, oh, hey, Dan, I saw your 6-minute spot at this bar. I want you to open for me in this arena tomorrow night. Like, that was never going to happen. But the opportunity I see is I meet people this year, and then in 2025, 2026, they're like, oh, hey, it's that guy. It was kind of opening the door for the, oh, hey, it's that guy moments in following years.
We both know Koza Chaos, and every time I follow his Edinburgh journey, he's got this whole crew, this massive group of street performers who have been going there every year. And so like you say, you might have your own crew like that in a couple of years. And I imagine that's where some of the best memories are made, is when you're sort of all struggling as up and comers at the festivals. And so first step of a journey of 1,000 miles, whatever they say.
Well, I won't quote this in its entirety because I don't know the full picture, but like Eddie Izzard and Kozo are pals.
Really?
Like when I was over there, that was the yarn. It's like, it would sometimes be like they do like the draw for who's performing when, and Eddie would be involved.
Eddie was a street performer, of course.
Yeah, Eddie's like OG, right? And so
yes, you're right.
I don't know how that connection was formed, but if you've got Eddie at the Fringe every year, you got Koza there all the time. Maybe they go way back. I'm not sure, but there's just, when you get over there, you're like, fuck, it's such a small world, and everyone
100%.
knows everyone, and everyone's connected. And any comic you jump on their Insta and you follow them, you're like, oh, these 27 people as well. So
100%.
And I'll tell you a recurring theme at Fringe, anyone I would meet, Danny Sewell, mutual. That fucking guy hustles, man. Every person I would meet, I'd be like, Danny. One person I met after a show was like, oh, I loved your routine. I want to get into comedy, or I have gone into comedy. This guy called Danny Sewell is the reason I got into comedy. I'm like, can he just like, Jesus, man. He gets around.
He's the most well-traveled, like 22-year-old I've ever met.
Dude, 100%. Yeah, short of like, I'm not going to make a trafficking joke. Let's just say yes.
Yeah. Let's leave it at that.
Let's keep it light. It's a Monday. I'm tired.
So I see we've got 6 minutes left in this Zoom call.
Oh, sweet. That works out well because I've got 13% battery. We'll see which one wins.
Well, let's do the last one because I feel like that could be a big one. Is how to not have a mental breakdown in 6 minutes and 30 seconds with Dan Boerman. Go for it. All
right, everyone. What's going on? Smash that like button. I'm Dan Boerman. I'm about to tell you how to not have a mental breakdown. Genetics is a lot of it. Some stuff's just predisposed.
You just built different.
Yeah, I just got that dog in me, man. Never mind that it's a Pomeranian. It's a dog nonetheless. No, yeah. Will someone please give my fucking inner Pomeranian a schmacko? Look, for me, benefit was I don't drink. Even comics that do drink didn't for Fringe. I think if you can eat vegetables, get a reasonable amount of sleep, and try not to drink too much piss or put too much up your nose, you'll be fine. Like, that's the main thing. I did 40 spots over there. There's some boys over there doing 150. And I wish that I had that hustle and could do that. But they look fucked after. You look at them and you're like, you look like you need a hot meal and a carrot. Like, you just, it was hectic. So I'd say, like, for me, I went, I got some multivitamins and shit and tried to, get plenty of rest. And I came out the other side. I just think, it kind of sounds like some cheesy, Nan advice, but genuinely up the fluids, have a Barocca, try not to do too many drugs, which is also just good life advice outside of Fringe, right? If you have a Barocca and don't do too many drugs, that's kind of the secret to a happy life. Just moderation.
Genuinely, one of the things I took away from the tour with Koreos is that the importance of hydration. We started drinking electrolyte packets that you mix up in just like a pump bottle. And that brought us back from the brink several times, and I've been somewhat mocked by certain comedians for advocating that you do something as shocking as have a lozenge to take care of your voice and to hydrate and everything like that. And it's like you say, the ones who will be hustling and trying to hit 100 spots in the Fringe and that, they're just knackered. They look 10 years older than they actually are.
100%, and like I say, I reckon there's probably some sweet balance between me going in, fairly kind of conservative approach to it and burning yourself out. Somewhere in the middle would be that sweet spot. Mm-hmm. And I reckon you'd be able to find that in year 2, year 3. So for me, it's like my advice would be the first year, have your Mondays off or do half a run, have some vegetables, don't do too many drugs, and you'll probably be sound. And I think the other thing is I don't know, man. Sunline exercise, I go hard on that. I'd run up Arthur's Seat and piss the gym and stuff. I wasn't just living and dying by getting as many spots as possible. I was just kind of doing what I do back here and then doing a couple shows every day. And then smashing the Tesco meal deal and ringing my mum when I could. And it was just all groovy.
Fantastic, man. Well, let's get the plugs in. You've got way more followers than me, but I'll try and send some of mine towards you. How can the people find you on the internet?
Follow me at Dan Boerman Comedy. I'll tell you what's frustrating about the followers situation. None of my viral reels have been stand-up. So I'll post stand-up and I'll be like, hey, this is what I do. Please book me. Please check out my gear. And people are like, oh yeah, that's cool. There's 900 views and a comment from my friend from high school. But then when I was over in Edinburgh, dude, I don't know if you've seen the reel, I saw a fox for the first time. I was like, look at this. This is a fox.
Yeah, dude, I did see that.
3 days, 1 million views.
Wow.
In 3 days because of the high engagement rate from the Americans in the comment section going, that's not a fox, that's a coyote. And then all the Scots defending me. I literally people at my show afterwards, right? How'd you find out about the show? I saw the fox reel. I'm like, that's dude, so I can't fucking predict this stuff. Yeah, at Dan Boerman Comedy. You can see me mincing around Cuba Street in my Lululemon track pants. And having a Barocca at your local fucking night and day. It's where you can find me.
Nice.
And in your DM. I'm in your DMs.
Very good. Well, thanks for joining me, Dan. I really appreciate you giving up some of your time. Let's stay in touch and maybe we'll do some other podcasts in the future.
I appreciate it, man. Good yapping, and I hope you have a safe and wonderful evening. And dude, if you're hydrated, the world is your oyster.
Hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did recording it. Go ahead and give Dan a follow on social media. He's a good follow. He posts heaps of clips, which is fantastic. As always, any reviews you can leave of the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, or whatever else we are listed on is greatly appreciated. At the time of this recording, my podcast is number 5 in the Nepalese charts once again. Big shout out to any listeners out in Nepal keeping us in the charts there. Couldn't do it without you. I think we've also started appearing back in the New Zealand charts again. So, anytime you can give me a review or anything like that, share it around, share it on social media, whatever you got to do. We very much appreciate that. I've also just created a YouTube page, especially for posting Riddle Me This on it. I was initially posting, the RSS feed was posting straight to my regular YouTube page, but I found that was just cluttering up my feed so much, so you couldn't, you'd go to my YouTube page and it would all just be podcast entries. So what I've done is I've made a separate YouTube page, which you can find at Riddle Me This. I'll chuck the link in the show notes going forward. And occasionally there I'm going to be posting the video versions of certain interviews, especially if they're ones I think would help me sort of getting discovered and searched up by people out there. So if you want to watch this one in video format, you can go ahead and go along to Riddle Me This on YouTube and check it out. Alrighty, well that's us for another week. I hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you got something fun on this weekend, and I look forward to talking to you Monday morning. Take care, family. Thank you for listening to Riddle Me This. Don't forget to hit subscribe and leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. You can find me on social media at Taylor Riddle Comedy on all the major platforms. You can also join patreon.com/Taylor Riddle Comedy for free, which gets you access to all sorts of extras and behind the scenes content, as well as allows you to communicate directly with me and let me know what you think of the show. Tune in again next Monday for another episode of Riddle Me This, and until then, Riddle her out.
This has been a Tape Deck Media production. Thank you for listening.
Hey Riddlers, I joined a group of podcasters that we are calling the Trailer Alliance, a group of podcasters that share each other's trailers at the end of the episodes and generally support each other. So at the end of each episode for the next few weeks, I'm going to be playing a trailer of one of the members of the Trailer Alliance. And here's one of them now. I hope you like it.
Hello, Like Mother, Like Murder listeners. I am Rachel.
And I'm Heather.
We are the hosts of Like Mother, Like Murder.
We bring you the good, the badass, and the crime.
Each week, we bring you stories from missing and murdered
to survivors and women who empower you.
And of course, some mom talk sprinkled in.
Check us out wherever you get your podcasts at Like Mother, Like Murder.
And give us a follow on social media so that we can say hi.
Okay, love you, bye.
Okay, love you, bye.